It's time for your favorite podcast about choking and butt cuddling. No, not that podcast, a different one. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, Black Man on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. If you're looking for your choking and butt cuddling content, your worlds are colliding today in the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast because we will be discussing a victory, 1 down, 37 to go. Happy new season, everybody. We're up and running. Your instant reaction is up over on Patreon if you want it. We touched on touching butts and throats, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit today, along with how we played, who played well, what it means for the rest of our season, if we will indeed win all 38 games, and if not, does Mikel Arteta have to go? It's a pretty simple question. Are we signing Ilkay Gundogan? I don't think so, but maybe we'll talk about that because transfers are more interesting than football. True story. On social media, I put out just, hey, give me some topics you want us to discuss about the game yesterday. And all of the replies are about anything but the game yesterday. They're like, what about Gundogan? What, are we assigning Ivan Toney? What's going to happen with Nketiah? What do you think about Villa? It's crazy how many people have overlooked this Wolves game, and I think maybe that explains a little bit of some of the reaction to it as well. You will, though, be stuck with a rewatch of the Wolves game this week over on Patreon. That means we put the game on the screen, you watch it, you see it, we analyze it, we break it down so you can think about it differently, and I'll explain why I think that's so important in a moment. You will get the first Power Rankings episode of the season on Patreon this week as well, where we basically rank the big 8 clubs now, right, in terms of where we think they sit at this current moment, not in the table, but in our estimation. So there's a lot going on there. We'd love to have you there, but we are just thrilled to have you here because we love you and we're excited to share this season with you. And I am excited to share this moment with Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PosmoPants.
Woohoo!
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at CliveBFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And remember, if you are not happy with the new season's music, we did set up an email address for it. Paul, what's your email again? No, I'm kidding. But yeah, send all your complaints to Paul, please. Tim is over in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, lobbying Congress to no, I'm kidding. He is there to support the Arsenal women's football team, which beat their opponent yesterday. Was it the Washington Spirit? Is that what they're called?
Spirit.
Yeah, the Spirit. That's right. Who apparently lacked the necessary spirit to beat the mighty Arsenal, which is true for most teams that come up against us most of the time. All right. It's time to get on with the real stuff. And Clive, I'll just start with you. Back to the Emirates for real competitive football. And I think my biggest takeaway from this is it felt like preseason plus to me. I was excited for the new season. I was trying to get myself fired up. But when it all kicked off, thinking about the Villa game and the City game and the Spurs game that I know are out there with Brighton looking as good as they looked on opening weekend, I think I understood that we were maybe undercooked for the start of the season just by a little bit. And I felt that in my own emotional reaction to the game. How was it at the Emirates? How did you experience your start to the season? Did it feel like preseason plus, or did it feel like everyone was ready and raring to go?
Yeah, I think we say this now that it's preseason plus, but when we were watching the game and all the messages flying around, I don't think people are thinking it's preseason plus, right? So let's be honest about the way we look at the game. We look at the game, we have these pictures of the team in our mind, of the picture selection, and we have favourite players, favourite positions, or positions under scrutiny, and we look at those positions more tougher, should I say? Probably use the wrong words. In a tougher way than we do other positions and other people and other players. And the key to remember is we played this team against Lyon, and I suspected that we were going to start this team against Wolves because they need to build fast minutes into those players. And then we got to a situation where we play against Wolves on a really hot day and we do fine, but we see some anomalies, which you would see on the back of a tournament summer. And that's the moment to sort of breathe and sort of say, what am I looking at here? What's changed in the way we play? What are we trying to achieve? What's changed in the way the opposition plays? I think that's the key thing. And again, fortunate enough to be able to go and see pre-season, to see things, to see how oppositions are playing against us, and to see Gary O'Neill do some similar things to what Liverpool did, I thought was really cool. And when you see that, and you see that construct, you think, okay, we need to change and adjust. And we will do. So when we get into the game a bit more, Elliot, I think we'll talk about that. On the day itself, I felt nervous, if I'm honest with you. I don't know why. I just felt nervous. And I think because I'd watched every single preview there's possible to watch, and 8 out of 10 of them said that Arsenal will win the league, I carried that in my rucksack to the game. Do you know what I mean? I carried that burden with me, and I think
So that's the great thing
other
about going to the
people did.
ground, though. They're not going to let you bring that in when you go through security, so you're forced to lay it down. Whereas I can just sit with it in my living room.
Yeah, I know the guys in security. They just dap
They'll
me
let
up.
you bring it
They
in.
just dap me up, give me a hug, and off I go. Right. So
Oh man,
and
it's like the meme
so
of that one security guy in the U.S. who just kind of waves his arms around everybody and lets them into the ground.
but I don't bring it back to us. But yeah, it's I carried it with me. Just full disclosure, I carried it with me, and I was a bit edgy before the game. I wanted to read about things. I was just edgy, right? And I don't think I was alone in that. Given some of the stuff I was reading, it was an edgy, average analysis, shall we say? So yeah, we're all allowed to go through emotions, aren't we? Different ones. First game of the season. We're in pre-season too, so that was my experience of the initial part of the day.
Yeah. If I have anything to take away from my experience with the day, it's that this is going to be a really hard season, not so much on the pitch, but in the psyche, in the collective zeitgeist, because we've said this before, but I really felt this on Saturday. The experience of winning 29 games and not winning the league, the experience of 62 goal difference, of winning all but 2 games from January to the end of the season, of winning games 5 and 6 and 4 and not being champions. I think it's going to lead to a season where every game feels like a title decider, because we know if we drop points, that's going to be the game everyone goes, well, that's where the title was probably lost. Right. And so this was a perfunctory 2-0 victory. Lion share possession, gave away 0.5 expected goals, produced 1.2, but enough to get our 2 goals and win it. I don't think we got quite out of third gear. We had one little lull in the second half. We'll get to all of it and all the performances and why, but still, the sense of it not being a good enough performance was out there. And I think that sense doesn't come from necessarily what happened on the pitch as much as what we feel the team needs to hit level-wise to have a chance to achieve what our goals are. And so managing expectations this season is going to be the key. And I'm curious, Paul, if you felt that as well, because in a way, I almost think the big games will be easier, because big games are big games and they come with pressure and tension, and the game itself carries enough weight. I worry more about these kind of games, the home games against mid-table teams, where the expectation is that we just blow them off the pitch. Otherwise, it's a crisis, right? So is managing expectations both for the players, but also just for us, all of us as fans, and not having last season's near miss in our mind, the homework assignment for us now as the season gets underway?
Well, it's probably the homework assignment we should take on, but like most homework assignments, we will dodge it if we can. Like you just did one there, like you probably think the big games will be easier. I think that might be the expectations of last year, where we beat all the big teams home and away, and that may not be the case every year, including this year. So like that's what we do. Keep our lives simple. We want to sleep at night. So we say, okay, well, we got that covered. We just need to worry about this thing. But football's funky. Every season's different. We may trash everything from team 5 below, home and away all season. And this season may be the one where the big teams are actually quite challenging. We won't always get the rub of the green. I don't know if we got the rub of the green last year. We were just better than them. But yeah, expectations. I mean, it's Mikel's fault. What was he talking about? Starting the season by thinking about winning every single game, 114 points or whatever it was.
I'd take it. I would take it.
I would take it.
112 though, and it's Mikel out.
And so we got, that, but that's what it is, because this is our third season. We know that being brilliant isn't enough. So like perfect is what you're looking for. And so everybody comes in looking at the first game, knowing it won't be perfectly cooked, but then assessing how far off. And football makes you nervous. I mean,
Yeah.
Wolves could have made it 1-1. That header goes a little different. Other situation here, other situation. So it was a perfunctory win, but in the nature of all football perfunctory wins, like Man City's yesterday, I mean, Chelsea could have got a goal before them. They could have got a goal afterward. They could have got another goal after them. But it was perfunctory win.
And it's funny you say that, right? Because we're not City fans, so we didn't have the burden of expectation. We were hoping they'd lose. And what are a lot of Arsenal fans saying about that City-Chelsea game? Chelsea are a mess. City are going to win the title again. Like, that's a reaction to a game where actually City had every chance to be behind or at least equalized against from a pretty mediocre Chelsea team. And the XG in that game was, I think, like 1.3 to 1.3 or something like that. And it's reflected in a couple of Nico Jackson chances and a couple of near misses and a handball that wasn't called. And like, I think when you're watching your own team, I saw Mark Goldbridge, who, say what you want about the guy. He's a United fan. He has no love for Arsenal. And his reaction to the game I saw was, this is just typical Arsenal. They're right at the level again, dominating a game, professional performance. That's the reaction of someone watching us without the expectations. And so I'll just ask you this, Clive, before we dig into the lineup, the players that were terrible, the players that were worse than terrible, and the players that were a disgrace to the club and should never wear the shirt again. I'm kidding. Can reality match expectation? This is, if you think about it, 2 seasons ago was one of our favorite seasons ever because the expectation was, can we get in the top 4? And we pushed for a title. Last season, the expectation was maybe we can push on to win a title. The first half of the season was mediocre by those expectations, which set us up for a second half the club has literally never had in its history, which was able to exceed expectations. Can reality match expectation this season? We're not going to play every game this season like we did the run-in of last season. So what's the path to enjoying this one, connecting to this one? Last season, your motto was put last season out of your head. I kind of feel like your motto needs to be, we need to run it back. Can reality match expectation in terms of what this team's able to accomplish?
So my motto this year is just watch the football, right? So because we have things which we didn't have this time last year. This time last year, we were watching one of our bright young players go down with an ACL in the first game. We're watching Gabriel sitting on the bench while we're playing Thomas Partey at right back. I'm wondering what the hell's going on there. And then giving away goals against Fulham because no one was standing in position. Right? So I ended up drawing 2-2 in that game. We were trying to assimilate Declan Rice into the club, and we're trying to assimilate Kai Havertz into the club. So basically, we went through a midfield rebuild, basically. Everyone's talking about Liverpool's rebuild, but we had one of our own, but don't worry about ours. Right, so and while we were doing that, we didn't look so good. We looked a bit clunky. We had no Jesus. We had Elliot centre forward. And what do we have now? We have stability. We have 6 months of performance with people in the right positions, and we sort of know how we play. We have a little question marks in a couple of positions, but stylistically, we know where we are. Our off-the-ball identity has been defined, and Arsenal can play deep. They can defend deep. They can defend mid-block, and they can press high. So what's the problem? The problem we have at the moment is just managing health and fitness, right? Getting people up to speed, allowing them time to find their feet. Only got to look at William Saliba. Just look at him and just look at him and just see he's still the same player. But have you ever seen 3 passes given away like that from him in one game? I haven't. Not since he's been in our team. I haven't. If you remember watching the game and looking at every time it flashed to a player when the ball was out of play, do you see how many were stooped over with their hands on their knees? Did you see that? And when you see this stuff, you need to dial your analysis to a certain place. Just dial it, just tweak it, and say, okay, this is where we're going. My expectations on this game is completely different. And I like a second goal because I'm getting a little bit nervous. And everything I see now is heightened. And so, yeah, you just have to look for key signs to manage expectations. So this season, as a whole, I think I find myself saying this club and these people have done things in the right, appropriate way. They deserve something good to happen. And my want for these players and management and the Arsenal fans listening to enjoy something that we haven't enjoyed for 20 years is so strong that I just want that to happen for everybody. I want it to happen for everybody because I think we deserve it. But you don't get anything unless you do it. But while we're doing it, we need to stay, quite tight and recognize what we're watching. Otherwise, we could be part of the story to fracture things that are out there on the pitch. And I don't agree with that whatsoever. Particularly when we still, as a fans, we know so little. Particularly immediately, we may take 2 or 3 days to assess it and go, okay, now I see what happened. But we know so little. So we just need to cool a little bit cool expectations while we're watching and learning.
Yeah. Well, before before we can really analyze Arsenal effectively, I think one of the things we can do is look around the league and get a sense of what happened on the opening weekend for context. And I think if you look at Liverpool, they produced a half of football against Ipswich that was basically a jogging session. They didn't do anything in the first half. And then once they got a lead, Ipswich had no idea how to play and they blew them off the pitch. Manchester United, I thought, looked organized and coordinated for a first half where they produced relatively little. And then at a second half where they were all over the place again and the game turned into basketball and they were able to get their jammy late victory, which is kind of the Eric Ten Hag blueprint. I think Man City obviously looked undercooked. Chelsea, it's hard to tell because it's circus tent over there and you never know which clowns are going to get out of the clown car. I just think as you look around the league, you saw a lot of undercooked teams. Newcastle had to play the game down to 10 men, so hard to assess them. Villa defensively had the second worst defensive performance of the week behind only Ipswich. West Ham produced, I think, 2.3 expected goals against them. Very unfortunate not to get something. Now, to be fair, a lot of that comes from that very late. Was it Souček who contrives to miss from under the bar late? So, a little bit of take that with a grain of salt. But Paul,
Elliot,
as
just
you look,
before you move on, mate, did you notice how many sloppy build-ups there were, errors in all of those games? How people are getting robbed in central areas. So people are trying to go through what the coach is telling them what to do, which is their playing philosophy, but they're not quite as sharp to get to the ball, get the ball position right. The next man's not in position, so they hesitate to pass and they have a control. Bosh, get the ball nicked off them. It was happening all over the league, mate. All over the league. And that's just
and I think people have forgotten this because here's the thing. The last international tournament was a World Cup. I like to educate the listener. But the World Cup happened mid-season. So the players were in season form, went to the World Cup, came back from the World Cup, right? So we're many, many years removed from the last major summer tournament. There were 2 major summer tournaments. I think we've forgotten what the start of a league season feels like coming off major summer tournaments. And I think it does have an unevenness about it. So, Paul, anything stand out to you from around the league that maybe is instructive on what we need to think about or how the season is going to start? I mean, in a way, I'm glad we have hard games to start because I trust our coach to coach us up more than any other coach. And I trust our talent to get us through. And if teams are going to be undercooked, I'd rather play away to Spurs, away to Villa, away to City now when they're undercooked, frankly, than later in the season when maybe we're playing Champions League, we're fatigued, we're between 2 legs of a Champions League tie. I think there could be a benefit to us there looking around the league. But what'd you take from the first weekend of results? And obviously Tottenham play after we record this, so we can't talk about the humiliating loss they suffered until we do the Patreon pod tomorrow.
Yeah, I thought it was all pretty scrappy stuff, uninspiring. I think the reaction generally from the pundit class, from the media class, was it was a bit of a meh for a weekend. Like the teams who were supposed to won. The performances weren't all that. I did have the weird feeling during the game, our game, when we warmed up and we started playing some good football. And I guess 2 points off that. First, I started to feel nervous that we looked too good too early in the first game of the season. I do like the slow build, the slow ramp. I'm not saying City plan it that way, but it tends to be what happens with City over the course of a season. And that seems to be kind of the benchmark for how you do this thing and go strong. You don't necessarily look great, but you get your results. And you can see the elements of how you want to play. And I was actually a bit nervous that we were it took us about, 12 minutes to get going. And then suddenly we were zapping it around. We weren't getting lots of shots, but we were getting the play. We had them on the rack. We were moving them back and forward. You could see our football. And that was we had 3 of those bursts in the first half. In the second half, we had 2 short bursts. Mostly it was them. Mostly it was our intensity had dropped. And in a way, I kind of, looking back on it, seeing as we got the result, I think that's probably about right. I think I like the idea that our football's there, are just our intensity over 90 minutes. It would be bad if we were so cooked we were ready to go for game week 1. I think you saw our football in a way that you didn't necessarily see other clubs hitting the ground running. At least we were there in bursts. I think it might be just coincidence that Mikel, that the guys, that your Odegaards got back early, got fit, got going, because they saw the start of this schedule we have, the first 10, 12 games. The problem for us is we can't have a slow, gradual find our way back, because we're playing the big boys week in, week out, away from home. And we've actually got to come in pretty good form, hitting the ground running, being able to turn on the football to open these guys up. And that is the weird piece of this season. You want to ramp, but we got to come in. We, above all teams, have to come in able to play our football, able to turn it on when we want to, and then manage it in the gaps. And there will be gaps, because you can't go intense for 90 minutes in the first 10 games of the season and be there halfway through the season and then late in the season. So we seem to have the on-off switch. And that might be overly generous to what we did. I'm sure it is. But sometimes, the way it is the way you want it to be. We have an on-off switch.
Yeah, and I want to be cautious about crafting narrative that fits what happened and actually see what happened and respond to it. And the funny thing is, I had to rewatch this game. Now, I'm not a big believer of, you can only see the game if you rewatch it. I do think on an opening weekend where I'm on social media and I'm excited to engage with everybody and the emotion is high and I'm in a headspace that's sort of removed from the game in a way. And then you're just looking for big moments and you can let those big moments decide it. So I did rewatch this game. And I think the reality is this was Arsenal just sloppier, frankly, right? Like everything that went wrong with this game was a byproduct of someone doing something sloppy that they don't usually do. Kai giveaway, a Saliba giveaway in particular from the 61st to the 69th minute. That was really the period that they dominated us, so to speak. And, there were a couple of party giveaways. There was a Saliba giveaway. There was a Kai giveaway that kept us under the cosh. But by and large, we looked like us. And Clive, the first half, I think, was kind of an Arsenal performance, really. We started a bit slow, but then the press started to work. I think Wolves were intelligent in the sense that I really believed that what they'd try to do is play through the press. And for the most part, they just kind of tried to go over it, which fair play to them, because that's the only way you've got a chance to deal with it. And I thought that led to an interesting dynamic. There were stoppages in the game. We'll get to some of the refereeing decisions. From a lineup standpoint, by the way, the only major note, I think, is Kivior not being in the squad, which for me suggests he's off, which I don't think is hugely surprising. So we'll look for that exit, I think, before the window closes. Nketiah was on the bench but didn't come on, and there's still rumors today that there are clubs interested, Forest, I think, being one of them. So we'll see what happens there. But Clive, the big decision points in the lineup, Kai did start at 9, Martinelli did start at left wing, Thomas Partey did start at number 6, and otherwise I think pretty much, and that's probably what we expected. I was not as sure what would happen at 6, but I think no huge surprises. So what are your thoughts on how we lined up, how we approached the game in the first half, where I think after rewatching it, we honestly looked pretty sharp, pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to do, Elliot? Do you want to analyze this through players' eyes, or because there's a couple of players that cause division, shall we say, in the?
Well, I do want to get into the midfield dynamic, because I think for our season overall, that is an interesting question. But I'd rather, if you don't mind, just start with what we did well in the first half and kind of how we played that first half, because I think it's misunderstood. I think we actually did a really nice job of getting into dangerous areas, and to Mikel's point, execution in the final third.
Okay,
that's
so
where we have to
you want to
improve
talk about your on the ball attacking rubbishy stuff that you always want to talk about.
Yeah, that's the stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we you have to look at Wolves, really, what they did, and we did a preview, and part of the previews, I'm doing a lot more research on your position than I normally would do. So I knew about this bloke Larson. I knew about him, and he's had a lot of good press about him, and they went over the top to him, and he's a player to watch. He's on loan. He's someone to watch. I was quite impressed with a few of their players in the preseason games that I saw. Both Gomez's are quite nice and they're quite lively. And is it Lerner or Lee, this midfielder? He's really, really quite quick across the ground. I thought, oh, yeah. And what they were doing, Lamina, sorry, they were doing, they were like Liverpool, they're doing this thing now where they're doing it's like a 4-2-4. So they have a front four pressing onto our back line. And Liverpool did it. So they put our goalkeeper under pressure, and Carl Hein was able to find the sides. So they got the ball back. And I think this is something we have to adjust to. And to adjust to this, the best two players in these sort of deep line positions to get the ball and shift positions are Partey and Zinchenko, right? So to create space in the centre of the pitch, what you need to do is to move Rice and Odegaard out to the extremities, right? So they can then, you create space and they come back to the ball. You don't come back too soon because you bring people with you. You bring people with you, like did in the second half, you end up with a crowd scene that no one can extract themselves from, right? So I thought it's quite interesting how we, sorry, my watch went off. Quite interesting how we manage this. So eventually we're good players, right? So we're going to turn out of danger. We're going to fizz the ball along the lines. Zinchenko's going to jump in at the right time and then overload, and we're going to get down to the pitch. And we're going to get to Saka. When we get to Saka, the world changes. The sun comes out and everything looks beautiful, right? And I thought Martinelli worked very, very hard. Odegaard does his stuff. Kai Havertz is so easy to find. So we have a way of playing now where everyone's available and looking quite sharp. And so nothing to see here, mate, once we got through that initial phase where we didn't overextend ourselves energy-wise on them and try to overpress them. But once we started to get the ball back easier by winning our duels at the back, then we're off to the races, right? And quick free kick, a free kick style of play from the first goal where he pretended Martinelli, did he pretend he was injured on that left-hand side? He was doing something with his laces or something, and suddenly he gets up and then we recycle the game. If you watch the ball when we switch the point of attack to Saka, if you watch them sprinting over, because they've realised for the first few times they've left him one-on-one. I think it's Ricardo Gomez just sprinting over. And then he just sort of clipped into the box and the rest is history. So I was quite impressed with our composure. I was quite impressed with our ability to get it into central areas and play through. And you heard me use the phrase, I saved that for a little while. But our ability to attract and play through, which when you're sharp, we can do. When we're a bit fatigued, we didn't do so well, right, for 10 minutes. And that really was the game, really.
Yeah, I think Saka, it's so interesting because I don't want to say he was rushed back, but he made a point to come back earlier in the preseason than we've seen from some of the other big players at big clubs who went the distance in the Euros. And this was Saka, I think, reaching a level that the best players reach when they know they don't have a full gas tank. I watched that Liverpool-Ipswich game because I was really curious to see what Liverpool were going to be about under Slot. And Salah just managed his way through it, and then found a couple minutes to win it. And in those moments, his quality was sensational. And that was it. And it was done. Saka, I think, had a very similar game. He managed himself, and when the opportunities were there, he was an absolute killer. He had a brilliant game from a player who's not all the way back yet even. And I loved this comment from Mikel after the match on how close Arsenal are to the levels the team could reach. Did you guys see this answer? I think this is a great answer. So he was asked, how close are Arsenal to the levels the team could reach? Hopefully very far. It's the first game, so hopefully we can become a better team and evolve each week. That's the aim we have. On Team Digging In, we're going to have better days and worse days. Sometimes the opponent are going to guide you to play in a different way. Today we won in a convincing way, but probably in a different way because it's what the game required. And I think that ability to manage different situations is something special about this team. I think we've seen Arsenal teams in the past that when it's all going their way or when they can play the game they want, they can be imperious, but they can't play the other type of game. And this team can play a number of different types of games. Paul, I think the Kai Havertz goal is a thing of beauty. What's interesting, at about 10 minutes and 45 seconds, if anybody wants to go back and watch, Bukayo Saka plays an in-swinging cross in. Kai's making a near post run. Rice is making a back post run. It's a mirror image, not a mirror image. What's an image that's not a mirror image? A copy, a duplicate, a Xerox of the goal that we do score, except that Gabriel's making the back post run in that instance, and it comes from recycling from a set piece. But that that dynamic, Saka being able to deliver with his left foot in swinging, and Odegaard can obviously do it too, and Kai crashing the near post and Declan Rice crashing the back post, or maybe Mikel Merino eventually crashing the back post. That is something that I thought we'd see a lot more of last season. But based on those sort of mirror image moments from the game, I think that's something that we're going to see this season. It strikes me as something they've clearly worked on. And in fact, after the game, they said it's something we've worked on. I think Mikel had a quote on that. Well, I will get that quote up because I know he said that it's something we worked on, but I don't have it in front of me now, so I apologize. But
let's take it as read that they work on this stuff.
Let's just assume it looked very worked on. So what do you think of, Kai continuing to evolve into the number 9 that people had questions about him being able to be, and using aerial threat and delivery into the box like that as more of a weapon this season?
Yeah, look, he really attacks it. He makes that run. Behind him, as you say, is Gabriel, because this is, I don't know if this is actually what you call a second phase, but it's kind of a second wave. We've taken a corner. We've gone short. We do an interesting thing with our players where they're in a group and they're way ahead of in offside territory at the back, and then they shuffle forward and everybody's confused and you're waiting for the Rice corner to swing in, and they go short for some reason, and then they recycle it the other side all the way through Zinchenko out to the wing. Saka has a little time and space to get his head up, and it comes in again. And of course, Gabriel has stayed up for this. It's almost like they worked on it. And you have the 2 guys attacking the ball. And to your point, we thought we'd see this a lot last season. But if we don't see it this season, I'll be shocked, because the one thing Mikel has done, he has stocked our squad and our potential starting 11, our starting 14 with oak trees. Our back 4 will be 6'2" or bigger. Our midfield will have 2 guys who are at least 6'2" once we get my boy Mikel Merino in there. You're going to have Havertz up top. Saka needs to start wearing lifts. Martinelli needs to wear platforms, and Odegaard, look, he's good enough. We'll live with him. But you're basically going to have, we can easily field 7-8 guys who are 6'2" plus. I mean, holy crap! If you don't leverage that, and like you have Nicholas Jover in the technical area beside Mikel, the nerve of a special teams coach, set pieces coach, actually stepping forward for periods of the game to watch the phase that he's responsible for. And he stayed up for this second phase, and he's as intense on that as he was for the corner. So it does make you think that it's playing out just as they had scripted it. And he's all keyed up, and then they go nuts when they celebrate it. We saw in preseason Gabriel attacking corners like he thinks every corner is his chance to score. Saliba the same. It's like when you have 8 guys or 7 guys that big on the pitch, this is going to be a thing we see way, way more of in terms of utility. And those games when we're not fully at it, when it's halfway through the season, it's a bit of a slog, it's winter, this is a fantastic tool to get that goal that opens up the game, that opens up their mid or their deep blocks so that we can start playing our football and have a little space to play into. But the one thing you would say about it is the classic, it was coming. And I wrote the words before the goal because I don't always think that's a thing, but I've changed my mind. I think that is a thing. The commentator said it. I was thinking it. There's a goal coming.
Yeah. There were a couple of good moves leading up to that. Martinelli got in a couple times. Once he slid it across for Partey, but it was an air shot with his left foot, and then White shot wide. There was another one from Martinelli with the free kick routine that Clive mentioned, but the cross was cut out, unfortunately. And
it's basically all red ink, right? I got my notes here, and there's just a period of about 10 minutes where it's like, they may not have been all good moves, but they were moves. And it's like red ink all over the place. We blasted them for 10 minutes. It was coming.
Yeah, and then, there are certain moments in the game that really decide a game, right? I mean, the thing about football is no matter who dominates, no matter who does what, there's a couple of big moments that wind up deciding the game. Obviously, the goal is a big moment that decides the game. Kai puts Saka in, and Saka's taken down, knee to the thigh, but Saka goes down a little bit later than that, and maybe slightly theatrically, or just sort of the way he picks his feet up, and it doesn't convince the ref. I've seen people say they want a pen there. I've seen people say they think it's soft. We'll come on to the bigger decision later, but I thought this one. So here's my take on it. Martinelli's at the far post for a tap in, or it's a goal if he cuts back on his left foot. This is a very, very dangerous situation. I don't think it's significant contact, but the knee to the thigh, if you watch it really carefully, it makes it so Saka cannot cut back on his left foot. It essentially obstructs him from being able to cut to where the danger will be. And so I'd want it to be a penalty. It's a weird one, right? It would be a soft penalty, but if he doesn't knee him in the thigh, Saka cuts to his left and either scores or slides it across to Martinelli for a goal. So tough one there. I mean, it ultimately doesn't matter, so we don't have to get too stuck in on it. But then there's the Raya save, and it's a bad giveaway again. Saliba doesn't track very well in the box. Raya's moving to his left with the flow of the ball from right to left. And it's just a sensationally acrobatic save, and then good awareness to get back on his feet and collect the ball. Gabriel also did well to be alive to it, so there's no Wolves follow-up. I think Raya is a player who really could break out this season because he starts the season as the guy, not competing with the guy. And I think that will help. Now, having said that, Raya had his own ropey moments. He gave one away really badly that could have been a goal, saved well from it. And then I think the Saliba giveaway is on Raya a little bit as well. He drops Saliba in it. Now, Saliba's a player you think you can drop in it. Like, if ever there's a player where you're like, hey, I'm going to give it to you under pressure and you're going to play it well, Saliba's the guy. But Saliba gives it away really poorly. But I think it's also a bit on Raya. So a mixed day there. But Clive, I think the dynamic that I think still is so curious to everybody is how the midfield comes together and how the midfield plays out of possession and in possession. I thought Thomas Partey, watching it back, had a fantastic first half in possession. Martin Odegaard was electrifying in the first half. Everything good that we did flowed through him at some level. And Declan Rice, maybe a little more peripheral than you'd expect a Declan Rice to be, but you saw from the way he was cramping up at the end, this is Declan just coming into form. And Mikel said on Raya, Rice, and Saka, whether he thought he might need to leave them out. First of all, yeah, you have to really understand where they are, what they need to give them some space and let them breathe. They went through a lot, and those kids have played a lot of football in the last 2 years. But when you see that willingness, that energy to say, I'm really, really happy to be back, and you see that's genuine, it's a good sign. He did say that they talked about their return plan before the Euros, so they understood when they would be back and when they wanted to prepare and when they wanted to play. So there was clear planning there. But, from Rice cramping up, I've never seen him cramp up before. You can get a sense of just how undercooked some of these players are. What do you think of that midfield dynamic, Clive? And we may be looking to update it with the Marino acquisition. I think it's the part of the pitch people are most curious about.
Yeah, so people have issues with the six and why he's being picked, right? So let's just mess about. Let's talk about what we need to talk about. Thomas Partey's been picked for almost every game since he's been back fit, and I don't think people fully understand why. That's what I just said. Yeah. Basically, what
you said almost every game. I'm saying I think literally every game.
So, and people are not understanding why, because some of those games have been indifferent, some of those games have been a challenge. He was out for 8 months. But I've said at the end of last year, I think he's improving. And what I see from an improving point of view are a couple of things. His line height is completely different. He's far more aggressive in his line height than he was at the end of last season, where we were trying to hang on to win the league and we were dropping into centre backs and we had fullbacks cradling into a back five. So it's completely different. So we're engaging much deeper. Why do we defend deeper? We even did it in this game. Why do we defend deeper now? Because we defend deep because we've got a goalkeeper who can take every single cross that goes over it. So we're encouraging people to go over the top of our back line and our keeper can take it. So if you don't like Thomas Partey, what you say is, we look more open, we look more vulnerable. If you look at the football match and look at our line height from the defensive point of view, then you can see this is by design and he drops in between two centre-backs. Sometimes he doesn't engage quick enough for me, doesn't go out quick enough to engage. And I think sometimes, he showed himself when he shouldn't receive the ball. He should just let it go past you. Let it go, clip it line, son, particularly Zinchenko, clip it line. In this game, Zinchenko, what he did defensively was really, really good, actually. I watched it. I don't think he made hardly any defensive mistakes. But what he does do, and this is the issue why he comes off first, I listened to Paul in the instant reaction. when he's distributing from deep, you need to change it. Because that's when we're back. That's why he came off. Because our ability to ball progression from deep areas, what Zinchenko is in his heart is a 10. So what he does a little flick, a little turn in the first half, flicks it to Havertz. Havertz says, shit, I've got to get out of here. He tries to get out of dodge, gives it away, and they nearly score. Zinchenko didn't give it away, but in his heart, he's a 10. So he drops it off to the nearest man. Do you see what I mean? He does that up the field. We all love it. Little turn, flick, drops it off to the nearest man, and we're going forward. So everyone goes, Zinchenko's fine. His ball progression numbers are fantastic. Yes, but his starting position is better. So when his starting position is lower, we have a problem. We have to change. That's not an issue with him. I thought he had a fine game, but once we were low, we have to change it. We have to bring someone who can go out from those positions with much more dynamism. And guess what? He brings on Timber, and what did he bring? Dynamism, right? And he stops that side immediately. Thomas Partey's thing, I actually watched the game. I thought first half, he was fine. Second half, there was a period there. I didn't realize Sleeve made a mistake. I thought it was him as well. So I thought it was 4 mistakes he made. I'm thinking this is a total collapse. Right? So, but actually, I don't think I thought his first half was fine, but I think I over-egged his first half. And I don't think his second half was as bad as what I felt it was in the game. When you watch it again, I think I over-egged his second half. Now, we have a player here, 2 players maybe, in Zinchenko and Partey. They're not in contract negotiations. So what does that mean? They're in departure lounge, which means we are building in a different place, in a different space for them. But it doesn't mean that neither of them are effective or can be effective on a given day. And so if you're judging them, judge them on what they're doing and not what you think the first 11 should be. Judge them on what they're doing. There'll be plenty of time for Timber. Leon Bailey next week. Who do you fancy playing up against him? Right? So there's plenty of time. We've got a Dingo the week after. Let's see what we do against him on that side. Right? There's plenty of time for this to develop and come out. You know, and Calafiori, I think he might be suited for City. I do. I think, with a bigger forward there, back post headers, I think he could be suited for them. We could be building him for that game. We just have to allow this to develop. So I think with Partey, I think the key thing is he brings people to him with his 4-2-4 press. He brings people to him. And once he goes through, we are in. We are in business. But we have to risk it. We can't bring Rice in and we can't bring Odegaard in because that's what they want. And they squeeze us on. So we have to risk it with a guy that can get out. When he gets out, we don't say anything. When he doesn't get out, we say we need to change that position. His legs are gone. So we have to decide and understand what we're trying to do. There was a period when I thought his legs are gone, but he came back, right? So I think it's a very challenging analysis for some people because people don't like the person, right? And we let's not mess about. We know the drill. But I just try to watch the football. I try to watch the football on the footballistically side of things. There's good bits and there's bad bits. And there's good bits and bad bits for other players too. We just have to try to be honest about it. But if you don't want to be honest, no problem. You won't be here forever. And we can work another situation very, very quickly.
Yeah, and look, I think having rewatched it is very hard to watch football without your priors in the passenger seat with you. So if you think Zinchenko is a guy who makes us too vulnerable, you are going to remember the 2 times in the game against Wolves he made a mistake that left us vulnerable. And if you rewatch the game, you're going to see a very competent, assured Zinchenko performance that led to some of our best moments. In fact, I think the best moment of our entire match was a lovely Zinchenko pass on the slant in the interior to Declan Rice, who plays in Martinelli. And Martinelli takes a shot on a cutback when I think he maybe had better options. But either way, that's our best piece of buildup. And he's right there at the heart of it, okay? By the way, I'm not saying that means I think Zinchenko is a great player. What I'm saying is Zinchenko played a good game. But if your priors are in the passenger seat...
Sorry, mate. Sorry to cut you. What I'm trying to explain to you is, where did that position... What was his line height when he started that move? He was high, wasn't he? He was high. That's what I'm trying to say. People say things like, oh, he's this, he's that, he's this. Look at the game. Look where he does his best work, where it starts from. And look at where you get nervous. And I promise you get nervous at the edge of our area. Do you know what I mean? And that's what it is.
Yeah, of course. And but this is the difference. This is why I think the Zinchenko thing is a silly conversation and the party thing is maybe a more urgent one. Zinchenko, when everybody's fit, might be fourth choice. I mean, he might. If you think Timber or Calafiori is first choice or second choice, whichever one you think, and if you think Tomiyasu when fit, and I realize saying when fit with him is getting to be a little tiring, is third choice or second choice, maybe even first choice. Zinchenko is probably behind all of them by December. So to me, it's can we get by with him until those others are spun up? With Partey, it's a different conversation because unless and until we sign someone, it looks like Thomas Partey is the first choice number 6 for us, and he's going to play an awful lot. And so analyzing his performances feels more urgent because, and again, I know what Paul's going to say. When Marino arrives, Rice is going to go to 6. Okay, but that hasn't happened yet. So the team we have right now has 2 6s in it. It has Partey and it has Jorginho. That's it. Those are our 6s, unless Kai plays 8 and Rice plays 6. But you get my idea. So where I'm going with this essentially is I think the Zinchenko thing is more, can we hold out with Zinchenko until the others are up to speed? With Partey, it feels a little more urgent. And Clive is chomping, and I know you are as well, Paul. So Clive, why don't you come back on that and tell me why I'm seeing it completely wrong?
You're not seeing it wrong. It's just football, right? You know my views. It's just football. Just relax. For fuck's sake. It's just football.
No, right, I know. But don't you agree that...
Let me say something here, right? The urgent conversation, because there's no urgency here. We've got high-quality players. The urgent conversation is, can Declan Rice play to the right side of somebody else? That's the urgent conversation, because that's the bit we need to develop. We have a 24, 25-year-old, £100 million player that's played most of his career on the left-hand side, and we are buying another left midfielder to play on the left-hand side. So the urgent conversation is, can we get Declan Rice to help us on the right-hand side of our team? That is the discussion. We're adults. We have adult discussion. Don't worry about selection down the road and this player being first selection. In the end, Declan Rice will be the number 6 for Arsenal Football Club. And for that to happen, he has to develop a right-sided game. He does. And he has to develop a build-up game. And that is the coaching. That is the joy of having such a talented, quick-learning player like him that I can't wait to see in the right environment with players around him that understand him a year later on and understand his weaknesses and strengths. That is the development side of things. The Thomas Partey is not the development side of things. We need to maintain his health. Zinchenko, I look at the pitch and I think Zinchenko's a fine player. When I look at the pitch, I like taller defenders, Elliot. So you know my thoughts. But it doesn't mean I can't see his game. His game was strong at the weekend and we needed him. And there'll be many games when we do need him. So I think that is the big discussion. Can we get Declan Rice to play to the slightly right side of that line that I always talk about? And that is going to be what we need to talk about going forward.
Yeah, okay, that I think, to your credit, that is good analysis, right? Because we know Declan is effective in the left half of the pitch. We've not seen him do as much in the right half of the pitch. And if he's going to play 6, our 6 tends to drift to the right because the left 8 tends to drop in and make a double pivot at times. It also depends which fullback is going to invert. That's another consideration as well. So these are dynamics that impact where players are going to play on the pitch. And just so I can correct the record a little, my point about the urgency isn't that I think any of this is urgent, like we're in a crisis. I meant I find a pitched conversation about a left back who we know isn't going to start a lot of games, probably is less necessary than a pitched conversation about one of the most important positions on the pitch, no pun intended. And, when we look at City and we know that they've got that Rodri guy, I think that makes us think we have to have someone that good also. And there's lots of ways to build a team and lots of ways to flow through a team. The biggest thing I saw yesterday was a team that faded physically after the hour mark and made some uncharacteristic sloppy mistakes in the second half. But having rewatched it, I think pointing to any one particular player was probably wrong. I don't know that anyone was bad. I mean, if anyone was off the level I expect from them, ironically, it's probably William Saliba. That was one that surprised me. But Paul, why don't you finish off in the midfield, because we got to pay some bills here pretty quick.
Yeah, midfield. Thomas Partey, very good in the first half. My box for him at the moment is probably wrong and needs updating. And so I saw a player who looked pretty heavy in terms of legs in the second half. And maybe he was a bit, maybe they all were, but he visibly looks tired when other players hide it a little better. I think he made 2 or 3 errors in the second half. They scarred me a little bit. The team as a whole looked tired, so he's midfield, so maybe I put a little extra mustard on that for him. What was interesting was Mikel Arteta is a smart fellow, and he played Thomas Partey for the 90 minutes when he had a really, really obvious option, which was bring on Gabriel Jesus because we were tired and Jesus will run around like a terrier, drop Havertz into the left 8, drop Rice into the 6. And people said, well, Rice got cramp, but Rice got cramp on about 90 minutes. So that wasn't part of the thinking. He had another way to go if his thought was, well, I need Partey right now at this point in the season, but he's not my long-term prospect. Why is he playing him 90 minutes? I think, A, because there's a certain level of trust there, apparently, and B, he wants that guy to get 90 legs in his minutes because...
No, that's wrong. He doesn't want 90 legs in his minutes. That's for sure. He wants 90 minutes in his legs.
He wants him to get 90 legs. I'm not going to be moved on this. 90 legs in his minutes.
It's going to be very hard to look at.
And also, Clive gave me a thumbs up, so I know that was right. So he wants 90 legs in his minutes because he's trying to build him up to be a centipede and for the midfield. And this is a guy who wants options, right? He's going to tweak things. That's why I think you might be right on the Zinchenko thing, and you probably are. But actually, he's a very specific tool you have in your bag for the kinds of games we will face week in, week out of a mid or low block. And nobody in this squad can do what Zinchenko does with that ball. Calafiori, Timber, none of them. They may do other things that are helpful. And so it's going to be very, very tempting. He's going to want to have Zinchenko. If he's going to have him for the whole season, he has his uses for him. We'll see how many, there's going to be a lot of crowding there for that position. Timber, he brought him on in this game very interestingly, but I think in that left full back spot. But, Calafiori's just arrived. So, that maybe that's the explanation. I think he'll do a lot of right back stuff, but you got 3-4 options for the left full back. You got 3 options for left 8. You got 3 options for the DM at least. Well, exactly. And what Arteta has done is given himself loads of options on the back layer, in the middle layer, and the only place we're a little light is the front layer. But they're going to have the level of protection from those two layers in the team. He's got loads of options, loads of different looks. Will be strong each and every game throughout the season, defensively and in the midfield. I like where we're heading. I got a lot of trust in these guys, and it's feeling good. And I think Clive would say, don't get too hung up on the starting 11, which I generally disagree with, but I think I'll agree with it for this season. Don't get too hung up.
We got to talk about Bukayo Saka a little more in his goal. I want to talk about the choke slam not being a red card, especially in light of what we saw in the Newcastle game with the coming together of heads. And it just reminds me of the Bruno Guimaraes thing from last season. I do want to look ahead just briefly to Villa and talk a little bit about the transfer news that's out there. But I mean, as I said, we got to pay some bills. So let's do that first, shall we? Don't mind if I do. So, first thing I want to tell you about is NordVPN. NordVPN is a VPN from Nord. There you go. Okay, next one. No, I'm kidding. Look, this is the time of the year you need a VPN, right? You're going to be watching some streams from some places. You want threat protection. You don't want to be tracked. You are going to be trying to watch a highlights show that's in another country, or you're going to be trying to watch football that you have a subscription to in your own country when you're out of the country. There's all kinds of times you're going to want to be able to watch the football when you click on a video on social media and it says not available in your location. Oh, yes, it is, because I'll just simply be in another location. With Nord, you can do that with one click on an iPhone, on an Android, on a tablet, on a computer. It's an app you click. Was reading reviews of Nord and saw that I was happy to see that their speed rating reflects really well on them as well. So we have a great promo. It's exclusive to us. If you need a VPN, this is the easy one. I use it and I like it. So nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. You get an exclusive deal, a huge discount off your Nord plan. So you get a discount and 4 additional months on top. And it's completely risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And Shopify. Look, I got to tell you, I am glad that I don't do what I used to do, because what I used to do used to not make me very happy. But I worked a lot creating e-commerce websites and stuff like that, and the only tool I ever used was Shopify. And it's just like it makes it so easy. I think this is the key with e-commerce. If you have a product you make, if you want, if you're an artist, if you have t-shirts, if you have a more advanced or sophisticated business, by the way, 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, 10% of all of it is powered by Shopify. I mean, you're talking about big brands using this technology. And the reason is simple. Like, you need a professional looking e-commerce site with click and drag and point and click building. And it gives you that. The other thing it gives you is it does the checkout. It does the cart management. It suggests to people, oh, this is in your cart. Would you like to add this? They take care of the taxing, and they can take care of the shipping, and they'll do drop shipping. It allows you to sell on Instagram. It allows you to sell on, social media platforms. It just unify the whole thing into one simple and easy to use tool to build a very professional e-commerce site. If you want to go into business for yourself, this is the tool you use. It's that simple. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase, now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Okay. Last but certainly not least, we'll tell you about Timeline Nutrition. Timeline Nutrition makes MitoPure, and MitoPure is a urolithin A supplement. So it's a postbiotic that is derived from pomegranate seeds. It's basically the superfood that's in the pomegranate seeds, and it's targets mitochondrial health. So MitoPure is for muscle health, for strength, for longevity. It is the number one doctor recommended urolithin A supplement that is NSF and Clean Label Project certified. You have a powder that you can put into your breakfast yogurt or daily smoothie. It's a berry powder, or a soft gel. So you can choose either one you want. Look, everybody's heard about the benefits of these pomegranate seeds, but I'll level with you. I'm not going to sit around eating pomegranate seeds. Deriving the best nutritional supplements from the best foods is an alternative if you're not just going to sit there and gobble down those foods. So, this is a pure version of it. MitoPure is clinically shown to give our cellular generators, that's the mitochondria, new power by triggering the body's natural process for removing and rebuilding damaged mitochondria called mitophagy. There you go. So get your MitoPure now from Timeline Nutrition. They're offering 10% off your first order with timeline.com/ArsenalVision. That's timeline.com/ArsenalVision. Once again, timeline.com/ArsenalVision. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. Moving on. For Clive, can we just do a little segment quickly on Bukayo Saka? I think people want to see him go from one of the best players in the league to transcendent, and he was transcendent in this game. A player who has the ability to manage himself and then make the critical intervention in the critical moment. When Mikel says we need to be more efficient in both boxes, the question, I think, is, can Bukayo Saka take these dangerous moments and turn them into something special? And he's showing that he can. His goal is taken so brilliantly. He just cuts in. And I think this thing he's doing now of understanding, if the keeper's got his weight on his left foot, I'm going to go near post. On his right foot, I'm going to go near post. And that's exactly what happens. The keeper's cheating slightly. It goes through some bodies. He fires it in the near post and kills the game. And it's the timing of when you do this stuff. Because from about 60 to 70 minutes, that was our worst period of the game. 61 to 69 minutes. It felt like we had a terrible second half. What we really had was a terrible 10 minutes in the second half when we were under the cosh and we were giving the ball away. And Bukayo kills it with that goal. And he makes it safe, and everybody can take a deep breath and celebrate a victory on the opening day. So he's our best player. I thought Odegaard was brilliant in this game, and I love him. But Bukayo Saka is the player who makes the critical intervention. That is a unique thing. It's what Salah gives Liverpool. It's what Haaland and De Bruyne really give City. It's what Saka gives Arsenal.
Yeah, I thought we had 10 minutes of making bad decisions, and then Saka scores, and everything looks fine. We erase those moments, and so yeah, he's always been the first one over the top, my view, for quite a while now, maybe 3 years now, shall we say. He takes some responsibility and accountability. So what's he doing different, in my view, this year? I think just the way he passes the ball. I just thought his contact on the ball was really good. I often think aesthetically, Saka doesn't always look good. The way he kicks the ball, I think he kicks around it sometimes when he's crossing. He kicks under it and around it. And you think you should do better. I thought his crossing and every ball strike was beautiful. Even some of the pace of his passes, they were beautiful. Weight, Centre of ball, just really, really good. He's always had the ability to stop and start people and unbalance people and then do what he likes. So he's so wise, he's so intelligent. So if you double up on him and take out the inside, he goes on the outside. If you don't quite get a double up, you triple up on it. What he does, he waits, and passes through the triple team. So we got an advantage somewhere else. Then if you get aggressive on him and really take away his left foot, he goes on the right foot and beats it to the byline and crosses it. So he's got all the moves. But what I saw in this game, we all saw the back post bombing in the friendly game. So we're looking out for that now. I think he had a header in this game as well, didn't he? In the 6-yard post that he missed. That's a good chance, by the way. But Elliot today, and it's not just him, his secondary movement once he's knocked the ball and his ability to go again shows a level of enthusiasm that shouldn't be there when you played the Euro final about 3.5 weeks ago. You know, that enthusiasm to get and reposition himself. And I saw this in the whole game, actually. Our ability to run through lines and reposition. Odegaard running into the box. Havertz running through lines. Gabriel running into the box on one occasion. Partey running into the box right the way in. Rice running through. And his ability to run through is going to distract to allow other things to happen. And so that sort of thing is really, really good. So, hey, I won't go over the top on him because I'm only going to say not to go over the top. But if we win what we need to win this team or wins like a couple of leagues and a Champions League one day, they might as well put a space for a statue for him because that's sort of thing you got to do, right? So, and he stays at his club. This kid has got statue material written all over him. And we're just so lucky to watch him develop year on year.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a special player. And I have to admit, when he was younger, I thought what he was going to develop into is a playmaking master, that he would be the kind of guy who gets 7 or 8 goals a season, but 15 assists and just constantly beating people, and his delivery would be excellent. And I'm wrong. He's a playmaking master and a goal scoring master. He's all of it. He's too smart and too skillful to only be able to do one of those things. Now, on the other side of that, Paul, is where there's a bit more debate. By the way, what a luxury too for Mikel then to be able to sub him off, something we didn't see last season. And Trossard comes on for him. I think the left-hand side, people are really looking at that to see if it'll fire, Paul, and I think there were sort of mixed reviews on the left-hand side in this game. I actually think a lot of good stuff came from the left that didn't come off. I mentioned the Rice to Martinelli opportunity. Martinelli provided a good chance to Saka at the back post with the header that just didn't quite come off. He also had another cross that was blocked in a really dangerous position. So Martinelli, 1 shot, 5 shot creating actions, did create a couple decent chances. Obviously, we talked about Zinchenko already and Rice filling in that role. So what do you think about the left-hand side? Mikel's going to have a lot of big decisions there. Like, it's interesting. He talked about Zinchenko starting, and he even made this point. There's a really interesting comment in here if you listen for it. On the clean sheet and Zinchenko starting, we go game by game. Urian has been struggling in the last few weeks and hadn't played any minutes in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Ricardo has just landed and is getting used to a lot of things. They're both progressing really well, and we have a lot of competition there, which is great for the team. You can see that Alex, especially in the first half, was really good. In the second half, we needed something else, and we had the ability to change there. So I think that is interesting. And he did make that change, and I just wonder how you think about the left-hand side coming together, because he's going to be looking at Trossard. He's going to be looking at Jesus. He's going to be looking at Martinelli. He's going to be looking at left back. And all of those positions, I think, are still very much open for discussion.
Yeah. I don't love Declan Rice as a left 8. I think he's a very good player. I think he plays very well in that area of the pitch. I think we have more space on the left-hand side than the right-hand side because you got that little platform over on the right-hand side with Odegaard. White's pushed up, Saka. It's all about those guys, so you don't get into that space. You're just gumming up the works. He has a bit more space on the left-hand side to move around, which suits his athletic abilities. And he's growing, and he's learning the position. So, this is not where, like Xhaka, this was not where he has played his football in the past, so he's growing into it. But we're getting a left 8 specialist whose name I'm not allowed to mention because I used up all my uses of his name on the Predictions podcast, who changes that whole area. why did Mikel Arteta take that money and splunk it on the left 8 spot when he has Havertz and he has Rice and he has potentially other players he can play in that spot? And he said, you know what? I'm going to make my potentially last move on the left 8 spot. And I think he wants a string puller, different to Odegaard, but a string puller in that area. Maybe string puller's hub, a guy who sets the tempo, knows the patterns, makes the move out to the wing, puts the angle ball into the box, because Martinelli's playing way too far left. He's starting left and way left, which is what Arteta wants, to stretch the pitch and to use his speed and to stretch out that back line. But he's getting stuck left as well. So he's not. Why did Martinelli have one proper shot in the game? Well, because he's not getting shots out there. They're not getting him into spots where he can get shots off, where he can make things happen. So he tries to beat his man, gets to the byline, because he had 2-3 really nice cutbacks. He has a couple of really good crosses, including the one for Saka that was a teensy bit high for him. Martinelli needs to be sprung. He needs players to ping off. Rice is very good, but he's not brilliant yet at left 8. Mikel Merino, that's his whole area of the pitch. Just knowing the next simple pass to make that opens up somebody else for the next pass that gets Martinelli in. This is my picture of what we're doing on the left-hand side and why we've got in there. I think Arteta looks at it and his feeling is he can get so much more from that side with the right player, the right hub there, hitting the tempo, the triangles, the little pass, keeping it simple. And you look at him, you say, he had an okay game, but the left-hand side really cranked. I wonder why that was. And I think Marino's your man. That's the thing that opens that up. Because we just look... Zinchenko, I thought, was really good in the first half. And your comment on Zinchenko from Arteta, we needed something different. I think we'll need something different a lot in the second half when Zinchenko's played. Because if it's gone right, we're scored, we're a goal up, we're maybe two goals up. And you got to Clive's point, it's a different way of looking at it. But in the second half, we may well be playing from a lot deeper. There's a point in the game where we're going to play from deeper. And that's still going to give Calafiori or whoever a good 30 minutes while he's coming up to speed and getting comfortable and learning the patterns. And we get a new midfielder in. I think Zinchenko, certainly in the first half of this season, is going to have a lot of uses for us. And I think we're going to find our whole left-hand side changes and the whole dialogue around Martinelli changes. Look what we give Saka. Every single game he gets Odegaard and White to say, how would you like the ball? Where would you like it? How can we serve you? Right? A, they can do it. B, their job is to spring Saka into the spots he needs to be. On Martinelli, it's like, hey, Martinelli, see what you can do on your own out there. We'll switch the ball to you. And good luck with that.
I see what you're saying. And we do give Saka a platform as we should. He's our best player. I do think that there were plenty of situations in this game where Martinelli was played in very good positions where I think we can still see better execution. I think the Martinelli of 2 seasons ago, what the hallmark of that Martinelli was excellent execution in the final action, and I still think that there's more that can be done there. What I'll say about Saka in this game...
Can I say one thing on that? Or we gave him those situations more often and slightly earlier. And so, like, he could get better end product, sure. We've seen better end product from him. If you give him that week in, week out, guess what? One of those is going to come off. He's going to get a bit of confidence and he's off to the races. So we're prejudging him before he's had his couple of moments that tell him, you can't fool the fat man. So there's a part of him that also has a little doubt. He needs that moment. He needs that goal where everybody goes, whoa, he's back. And he feels, whoa, I'm back. And everybody trusts it. It's volume. Get him into those positions more and more. He had some really good cutbacks in this game that if somebody had put that in the net, he'd feel it's not quite like scoring the goal, but you're starting to feel, hey, I'm off to the races. It's working.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of my point. I think we got him into some good positions in this game. And by the way, one of the, to the point of executing, I love this comment from Mikel on Bukayo Saka cutting into his left foot on whether he's surprised teams allow him to do it. With Messi, I know he's going to come here and put the ball there because he does it all the time. That's the quality of the players. I love him comparing him to Messi, just fuel for what is inevitably an online fire. And an
Was there
interesting
something
dynamic.
a little special about Saka's near post shot? I don't think I've really seen him, like, this was kind of his first situation where he could have done the far post curler, and he doesn't blink. I know you say he saw the keeper, blah, blah, blah. I don't know about that. I think he put his head down and fucking leathered it like he's been practicing for the last 2 weeks to hit the near post to scar keepers who want to cheat to the far post. One for the near post, then you start hitting for the far post. Bloody hell, it goes in. It screamed into the net.
Do the thing they're not expecting. Yeah, totally agree. Look,
and the beauty of it was
you're on a heater right now.
Oh, I think this is big, right? He looks like he's shaping for the far post. He now can go either way, and keepers will be terrified. They can't cheat. Jose Sa was cheating.
One thing that I thought was interesting about Saka in this game, he was occupying some more interior positions with Odegaard outside of him, which was, so I don't know if that was a new wrinkle. Sometimes players wind, like Timber came on and he winds up on the right side and overlaps Saka, and everyone's like, Timber was playing on the right. Like, he wasn't. It was from broken play and he was over there, and he stayed on that side. Like, so you got to be careful about taking too much out of one moment. But I do think that there were times where we were trying to get Saka closer to Kai and Odegaard was outside. There was one really interesting moment. Odegaard was outside of Saka. Saka cut inside. He played a 1-2 with Kai. Remember, it was like a little slanted pass to Kai. And then Kai just kind of wall passed it interior to Saka, and Saka hit it just off target. Or was it right at the keeper? I can't remember what the outcome was. Right at the keeper. Yeah, that's right. So I think that's one to look for too. I think clever coaching is about getting your best player into more positions where they can dialogue with the striker, get into spaces where they can influence the game. So I thought that was a nice little wrinkle. Let's start to turn the corner here. One thing I just want to ask about, Clive, and I don't want to do a big bit on this, but I just don't understand how the choke isn't a red card. And it reminds me so much of the Bruno Guimaraes thing where they're going to go out of their way to find some excuse, right? When Bruno forearmed, who was it now? I can't remember. Jorginho, thank you. The explanation was, well, it wasn't his elbow. This one, it was, he didn't use his full force. Well, I don't know what full force would look like, but Kai might not have a head. So the choking, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. And I think it didn't wind up mattering, but this is just a really weird thing that seems to happen where things that are like the red card is for, quote, violent conduct. What is that if not violent conduct? So you help me understand it.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the referee's performance. I thought it was a steady game, no drama in the game. You just had to manage the physicality of the opposition. So when Martinelli got smashed down by Joe Gomez on the right-hand side, I thought, that's a bit naughty. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit naughty.
Get a card for it.
Yeah, it's a bit naughty. So, and then you see the Moschino one, whatever his name is. He did a few fouls, but then when he did the Havertz, we did a Havertz one. I thought, that's a bit naughty. You gotta react to that. It's not about the number of fouls. There was a period when I think Partey got fouled 3 times. It felt like a minute running through centre midfield. You gotta do something on that. Otherwise, they're going to continue. So it's not about sometimes the penalty. Okay, the penalty didn't cost us, Elliot. If we draw that game, we talk about the penalty on Saka. It didn't cost us. For me, it's not the big events per se. It's just how you manage the game, how you manage the level of physicality in the game, how you manage these things. There was times where we're focusing on quick free kicks. So while he's talking to people and writing the name down in the book, I was talking to my fellow season ticket holders saying, Is it about time we stop having a referee writing in a notepad anymore? Can you just show a card? And could somebody else in this multi-billion pound industry take the name? Do you think that could happen so we can keep the flow of the game going? Or does the referee need to write down his flipping list that he's having for his Chinese takeaway in the evening and have a chat with the guy? When we take a quick free kick, he says, rolling ball, my ass. He just wants to come back and have a rest, right? So is it if you want to do that side of things makes him the centre of the game, which I don't like. So the referee, I said something else, I thought referee was awful. Someone said, Clive, you got all the big decisions right. Well, that's how you think the referee is judged. Well, no, he's judged on managing the game. And some referees can destroy a game for the watching public. They literally can. I'm not saying he did that. I'm not being over dramatic. I'm not saying he did that. But I just thought it's just a little bit disappointing. This is easy, right? Easy 2-0 home win. Arsenal at home, the sun is shining. One team that got a bit chippy, started kicking a bit. We'll just drop a couple of cards out on them and stop giving us silly cards for Jesus got a card for being abused. So that sort of thing just sort of disappoints me a little bit.
I think what you just said sums it up, by the way, in terms of how it happened. And Mikel said something similar. This is the exact Mikel quote. We scored 2, clean sheet, win, job done.
Yeah, move on.
That basically sums it up.
What intrigued me on the choke, my favorite bit of the choke, can you have a favorite bit of the choke, was Mascara.
Teach their own. We don't kink shame here, you know that.
Yeah. So he's leaning down, he's got the straight arm, and he waves at the referee for some reason. I don't know what the wave is saying. Hey, I'm caught up in this situation. Hey, you spotted me, but it's not a big deal. But he's still choking him, waving at the referee, still got his arm around his neck. And by the way, it is kind of violent. He smacks his head into the ground to begin with, like that bit hurts. Mm-hmm. And it's like this weird thing. Hey, ref, I'm just choking this guy. I don't know what that wave means. Look at me. I'm choking this player.
Kai fouls him, puts his arms around him, sort of wrestles him. Mascara loses his rag. And if you watch Mascara throughout the game, and I picked up on this in the second watching because he was on the edge the whole game. Okay? Really on the edge. And Mascara loses his rag and chokes Kai and then tries to make it look like he was just trying to find his balance as he was going down. And he's like, look, ref, I'm falling and this is the only place my hand could go. So he tries to sell it. And he gets away with it. So kudos to him. By the way, the other one
looked very pleased with himself.
This is where I got to admit,
he thought he had a good game.
Maybe this is just me being an old guy and I don't understand how life works anymore. But like, there are some people that are saying like the butt cuddle should have been a red card, and like, okay, you shouldn't grab another person there, and if you do that on the street, it's assault. But like, I don't know. I think he's just trying to move him on so they could take the free kick. I think if you do that, like, you know, there's some things I think you just got to let go in life and on a football pitch, and that's one. I don't see it as a big talking point. So the subs though, real quick, Jesus came on, Trossard came on, and Timber came on. Timber coming on for Zinchenko. We already covered the Mikel quote on that. Thought he looked lively. He had that really nice moment down the right-hand side where he dribbled past 2 guys and then just had it sort of blocked and went off him for a corner. Otherwise, a nice little moment there. I don't think it was like a flawless Timber cameo. You know, I think he looked like a guy who's still coming up to speed. Trossard, came on and played with Martinelli, which we haven't seen a lot of, but it was 11 minutes and Jesus had 6 minutes out there to run around a little bit and do some wind sprints. So I don't think there's much to take from the substitutes, honestly, but I do think there's this interesting thing that Clive pointed out, a Partey playing 90 minutes and Jorginho not coming on. I may be wrong, but since Partey came back last season, in games that actually matter, I think we've seen Jorginho for like 10 minutes total. He's just not in the plan, it seems. And I'm really curious about that. So anything about the subs that interest you, Paul, that you want to just quickly touch on, or if not, interest you from the subs that didn't come on?
I think the 2 most interesting things, the fact that he left Partey on, he got 90 legs in his minutes.
Yep, covered that.
Yep, and the fact that when Timber came on, miraculously, we started playing good football, and he hadn't really touched the ball, right? We were energized. We were down the other end. It was in Saka's area, and it was almost like it was a signal, like Timber came on with instructions, whatever. It's like, let's go for it. We need a goal. We can't sit back. It was like, all right, we've changed things. This is a period of the game. This shall not stand. We can't play like this for the next. And it was like, go time. And they went for it. And then Timber started having his moments. But like first, we started playing well with Timber standing in the left back area or drifting into midfield. But the play was down the right-hand side. And there was a signal. There was a moment where Mikel said, I don't want to watch this for another, whatever that would have been, 22 minutes. We need to play actual football again. Rocket up the ass, Timber on, let's go.
Yeah.
That's what I saw out of the subs.
Clive, do you think there's anything in the idea that Mikel is slow to react with substitutions? I mean, that 60 to 70 minute period is a bad one for us. A lot of giveaways. I mean, he does seem to be a guy who has a plan of how he wants to use his subs and doesn't always seem to just react to a situation. Now, he does say in his post-match comments that he reacted to the situation with Zinchenko and Timber. The rest was really just, after the 80th minute, essentially. So, and just any thoughts on what looked like a pretty strong bench and not relying on the subs earlier, especially this early in the season when players are still coming up to speed. I mean, Declan Rice obviously literally could not continue with cramp. So, I'm wondering if he could have gone earlier on a couple.
Yeah, he could have done maybe, but I was definitely thinking about it. We got to get people warm and ready to play, and eventually he appeared, and I think we made some. We it's really funny, isn't it? We do what we do, podcasting thing that we do, and we get lots of praise. And we tend to, as people, focus on the one bit of criticism that we get and go, oh, that's not a bit nice. It's like this game. There were so many good things in it, and we spent so much time. The scars in our mind is the 10 minutes when we gave the ball away 4 times.
Yeah.
And then that's just the scar. And it's difficult to not go there, right? But I felt he had some options. He looked at Jorginho as an option and he chose not to. Maybe again, experience says, sometimes when the game's getting hot, that's not the best substitution for you, right? So then we had a situation with Jesus, and Jesus came on and he looked so good. I have to be honest with you, he looked so good. And he was
had a couple really nice carries through the middle where he beat a couple guys and carried it into danger. Yeah.
I sometimes feel when he does this stuff, everyone just stands there and looks at him. I'm not sure that's what we need always. We're a team when we combine and we're a collective. But he looks so good. And Timber offers so much dynamism. That means everything changes starting position-wise. Everything changes. And the possibility of you travelling up the pitch just changes and people just drop away. And he's got these big biceps in front of you. And you, as a player, you feel different about pressuring that guy. But even he lost the ball, right? And so they were loading up on us, pressing us. And I thought our decision-making to get out wasn't smart. We didn't go long enough for me in that period. And we exacerbate the situation. And then we end up criticising the players that give the ball away when really they had no next pass in any of those situations, apart from one party one when he tried to chip the guy to get it out to the right back. That's the only one I thought was really like, okay, mate, your legs are dead. The rest were team things. And how about giving Gary O'Neill a bit of a clap because he worked out what we were trying to do in our first phase and clamped us, and we got away with it, right? Because they weren't good enough. And so, yeah, I'm not worried about the substitution. I do think the midfield construct, Elliot, just go back to that a little bit, if you don't mind. I do think Timber may be a solution more than we think for Declan Rice. Because if we do invert from the right back, Declan Rice hasn't got to learn about playing the right-hand side of the line. He can play right where he is on the left-hand side. If we do invert from left back, then maybe it suits a Jorginho or a Party who are happy on the other side of the line. Do you see what I mean? And I think that's the progression for this team. So as we're picking first 11s, which I don't like to do, if we're picking first 11s, maybe that's just the balance that we have, at the base of our team for a particular day. Or they're just one of the many, many options that we can all think about as we're listening to this right now. And we haven't got to get there on August the 17th from the first game of the season. We just haven't. What we have to do is get 90 legs in minutes, whatever it is. We have to get people ready and fit. That's what we have to do for a very difficult start.
If we keep getting 90 legs in minutes, there's going to be no way to play through us. There's just going to be just going to be a wall of legs everywhere. And
that's what I was saying.
We'll probably get red cards for it, though. No, look, I think all that's good stuff. My take on this is that it goes back to something I said in preseason, which is the goal of this season isn't to be good, it's to be the greatest. It's not even to be great, it's to be the greatest. And we know that that's the bar. And it goes back to our conversation earlier in this pod about expectations. We're going to have some interesting podcasts and interesting conversations online and interesting conversations in person this season, because this is a perfunctory 2-0 win where we played just fine in the first game of the season coming off preseason. And like, this is perfectly fine. You go back a couple seasons and do this performance in your opening game and win this way, everybody's over the moon about it. But with the expectations we have this season, it feels slightly different. And we're looking at things slightly differently. And I think it's fair to be fair to us fans. It's fair because we know the level we have to hit is so high. Just hopefully, we're able to enjoy some things along the way. This is a 2-0 win on opening day that looked perfectly fine. We got a couple of goals from our emerging star striker and our superstar winger. I think overall we played really well, and we have more to come. Clive, I'll stay with you for a second. It does look like Marino, because Paul's not allowed to say the name, might arrive this week. There's some other player rumors out there. Gundogan has now said he wants to leave Barca, and there's rumors he could go back to City. There's rumors that we might be interested. He's going to be 34 this season, and I don't know how I feel about that. Sterling's on the outs with Chelsea. Is that going to be a loan somewhere that they're going to have to make? Suddenly, there's some things shaking loose, and as you'd expect, these aren't prime assets. These are distressed assets, because that's what moves at this stage of the window. But are there any of these distressed assets out there, Clive, that have you thinking, we can change him, we can fix him, come to Arsenal and help us win a title?
I've got a couple in my head, right, and that I will share with you.
Ivan Toney.
Those names don't excite me. Those names, right? But there's a couple of names that do excite me. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday online, and we were discussing two wingers, right? And there is a winger at Brighton who I really starting to like in Adingra. I really like him. I think he's bright, sharp, plays both sides, really quick, offers real threat. And I think we need to have that threat if ever Saka was to ever twist his sock.
You're telling me, Clive, Adinga stole Meryl Streep's baby.
A dingo. That was a word play. Is that from Raising Arizona? No.
A dingo stole my baby.
A dingo ate my baby, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is the quote?
Well, we don't know what the dingo did when it got the baby.
Dingo ate my baby, and that is from the movie. What movie is it?
Don't really think it matters.
It's a movie, isn't it?
Isn't it called A Dingo Ate My Baby?
The dingo's got my baby, a dingo took my baby, a dingo ate my baby, a dingo is a cry popularly attributed to Linda Chamberlain Creighton as part of the 1980 death of Azaria Chamberlain case. Okay, I take it back. Why did I think
people have just blotted that out when this guy plays. They totally ignore it.
Yeah, wait, here's the Meryl Streep part. Chamberlain, as played by Meryl Streep, exclaims, "The dingo's got my baby." Okay. See? So what did I think was Raising Arizona? Anyway, look, the important thing is you were right. I was wrong. The wordplay was good. I have to allow it. Okay, Clive, were you saying anything of importance? Because I doubt it. But we're on to the important stuff now.
I was getting to something. I like the Brighton winger, Adingra, his name is, and I think he looks really sharp. And I've sort of got a feeling for that player. But then I was having a discussion, and he came up with a really good point he did. He sort of said, like Marino, maybe we need something experienced in this position. And I started to think, even a loan for someone like Leroy Sané as a loan. I think if you think about what we need in the forward areas, has somebody that can do a number of jobs, got the right level of speed, doesn't have to play every single week. And I think to myself, okay, do we go experienced or do we go young and talented? Or do we just break the bank and get the players everyone likes, like an Alexander Isak, for example? I don't know, but I sort of like the loan idea for a short-term period. Or I also like the young, bright winger that's about to explode, in my opinion, Adingra. I like that idea too. So we'll see what we do, right? But like Marino, I think whatever we do, it seems to fit. So we can look at the video of Marino, we can look at all the scouting, and we can go, I can see what we want to do here. It fits what we're going. So whatever we do, I think that's going to be the thing that's going to come to mind. He says, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I still think Marino will get done. And then there's one more out there. I think there might be one more out there. Now, that might depend on an Eddie sale or a Nelson loan or something like that. So we'll see.
Vieira loan I saw today, Elliot, potentially.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Kivior's probably gone too, right? I mean, you look at the squad we had yesterday or Saturday, Kivior wasn't in it. There's no room for that player at this point with the log jam that we have at the positions he plays. And, he's a good enough player to go play in Serie A. They seem to want him over there. That seems like a natural one. I think Eddie might be a trickier one to move as the options get more limited, but I still think there's a move out there for him. Not a lot of discussion on Reece, but we'll see. Both Nelson and Eddie made the bench. Neither of them came on. It'll be interesting to see because I think Marino comes no matter what, but I think another move would depend on an outgoing. So let's see if we can get the business done. There'll be plenty of time to discuss that on Thursday after it's happened, because obviously we'll have multiple signings between now and Thursday. We've got the rewatch. We've got power rankings, both on Patreon this week. So you're going to want to make sure to tune in for that. And that is your 90 minutes on Arsenal 2, Wolves 0, plus the origin of the phrase, "A dingo took my baby," as uttered by Meryl Streep. Thank you to Paul for that. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. We're going to get into there's a vibe of preseason around this game, and I think a vibe of preseason around this pod as we podcast our way into full season fitness and form, and we will continue to do so. And we might have some good stuff, by the way, from Tim from Washington, D.C. on the women's team. So look for that. Really excited for that. We've got a pretty exciting interview, I think, lined up there. So Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, Pause. Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. And we love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Villanelle